Portland has always been a place that folks have come because it represented the promise of something, of dreams, of opportunities, and of possibilities. I sure did, but we've lost sight of that. It's time to make Portland a place where its promise is fulfilled for every person who calls this place home. My name is Jesse Cornett, and this afternoon I'm here to announce that I'm running for Portland City Council, District 3, to be part of the change you all deserve.
Hello and welcome to Accent Network. Today we are welcoming Jesse Cornett, who is running for the 3rd District seat at the Portland Council. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Jesse, we are curious, what are the changes in the new council structure compared to the current one? Can you tell us?
The city council that we have right now is a commission form of government. We've had it for about the last 100 plus years, and we were one of the last 2 or the last 1 in the United States, where when you get elected, you're functionally also an administrator. So when you think about learning in elementary school about the 3 branches of government, Portland just doesn't have that. When you get elected, you're a legislator and you're given administrative authority. You could be an employment lawyer today and you get elected. Tomorrow, you're the civilian commissioner in charge of the Portland Fire Bureau. That actually happened. Portland Fire and Rescue is how it's officially known. I should get that right. And what we're doing now, it's scaring a lot of people who are entrenched interest because we're completely redoing our city government. And what we're going to have moving forward is the same kind of government that the vast majority of American cities have, where we have the different branches. You have a mayor who's not a legislator, who has civilian oversight over everything and hires the city administrator who will hire the fire chief and the police chief and whoever runs our Parks Bureau. And the city councilors will be just that. We'll be in charge of the policy and budget for the city. So we're going to be responsible for making sure that we're accountable to the voters, we're taking into effect their opinions, and we're going out and we're acting on it. The reason that we're doing that is the system as it existed before really created these silos, where if you thought you had a great idea and you weren't in charge of parks, the person that was in charge of parks would perceive that you're messing with their bureaus, which was a little sacrosanct. And so not nearly as much got done as should have. So that should all change. I think the most important change is going to be going from 4 to 12 city councilors means that Portlanders will, for the first time in a long time, have much more direct access to their city elected officials.
Do you think it's a change for the better or for the worse, or maybe is something in between? What's your personal opinion?
When I was asked if I supported the charter change, I hosted a fundraiser for it. When I was asked why I was supporting charter change, my response then was because doing nothing is no longer okay. And that's how I felt. If you get into the minutia of this, there's something for everyone to like and there's something for people to not like. But as a whole, it's a great system that's going to empower Portlanders in a way. So it is a huge net positive.
How much room is there for a commissioner? Is it like, would the commissioner have more power or more responsibilities or less?
The commission form of government means functionally you have 5 mini mayors in Portland, is what it means. They are very powerful positions. Just in terms of a numbers game, even if we were also the administrators, you're tripling the amount. So your overall power as a city commissioner would be diminished, and removing the administrative side of things removes a power as well. But then getting rid of the civilian oversight by elected officials enhances your power in other ways. You're the one overseeing who hires and fires that person.
Can you explain what civilian oversight is, please?
Sure. It's just simply who's in charge. You don't have to have any experience in running an organization. You don't have to have any experience with sticking with fire and rescue. You don't have to have any experience in order to suddenly be foisted to be in charge of that. So that's a civilian oversight. that's there. And so that was by an elected official, and now it will be by an appointed official, which means that if you're not doing your job well, there's a way to remove you, and that doesn't exist now.
We have looked at your program and have a couple questions.
Great.
Because something was not quite clear. First question is like, what is rental portal for homeless? And you also mentioned that it will function as a
One-stop shop.
Yeah, what does it mean?
So I'm working on a program called Build to Zero, and this is going to be under the rubric of Build Zero, with the concept of getting to a point where we have the housing stock, where nobody needs to be homeless in our community, where the housing exists. Right now we don't have that, and so that's going to be an intense focus. But right now the resources for people are very disjointed. You go to a referring agency and then you go to other agencies. You get told there's not a wait list right now, you have to check back, and when the wait list opens, we'll add you to it. There's no centralized database, and this is really about having a centralized database for homeless in the region, where if somebody's experiencing homeless, we know, like, okay, there's a woman that's been on her car off Southeast 82nd since last Monday. We have something available short term, let's get her in. We've got that logged in the database. We know where she's parking. We can go out there, we can inform her. If there's contact information, we can call, email them. We literally have no database.
Is it shameful to be homeless? Will the woman willingly be ready to be registered in this database? Just question. Maybe they're so ready for help that it's just going to happen.
What we're doing now is we're going to lots of places. And what we want to be able to do is have them go to one place. So, and yes, there is a lot of shame that is tied to being without a house in all facets of society, and there should not be. What we're trying to do is not create something new other than a central database.
How expensive is to create this database?
There's not a dollar figure affixed to it yet, but we have a lot of money in public coffers to pay for homelessness services right now. A lot of it's being unspent. Anything that I'm talking about related to mental health, addiction, and homelessness, we're not talking about something that we need to raise more taxes for. We're talking about things that we've already raised taxes for. We've raised so much in homeless services, and if we were talking about a private industry, Amazon, if we put this much money into a product and the product wasn't delivered, our politicians would be up in arms and we'd be filing class action lawsuits. We've got the money. We just need to create.
Why we have to wait for you to be elected for that? And why can't we just do it right now?
Because it's not being done. Because there's not the political capital or the political willpower, I should say.
So you cannot go to the Multnomah County public meeting and tell them right there in front of the commissioners to do that, and they're not going to do it? Or maybe I don't understand the process. How can it be done?
So if you propose this idea to the county right now, what you've seen in the board meetings that you've attended is there's a lot of institutional pushback to things. And this is not a knock on any individual within the system elected or any bureaucratic appointed official. But what people want to do is they want to do what they want to do. And what we need to do is leadership, and it's going in and saying, like, no, the way you're doing this is not working for the community at large. We have to do it like this. And the longer you're part of the system, the more you become entrenched in that system, and the better you are at saying, that's not going to work, and here's why. And that's what we have at all levels of government right now. What we have to have, or we have to have people who are elected, who are willing to stand up to the bureaucracy and the entrenched interest and say, yeah, it will work because we're going to make it work, because not trying to make it work means that people are using curbs for pillows, and that's not acceptable. That doesn't work. Let's make this work.
What about the housing stock? So you said that it needs to be increased so
Greatly.
greatly. So what is your approach to increase the housing stock? How would you make it work?
Build to zero. We have to build. We have to not cut corners. We have to not buy into the belief that the regulations are too hard because we choose to make the regulations say that you have to pay a living wage, that you have to build to safety standards so your buildings don't become pancakes in case of a earthquake. I don't know why that word was. We have to charge forward and build physical infrastructure. People think Portland is small compared to San Francisco and Seattle. The reality is they're probably about 100,000 people more than us in each case, give or take. In the last measured year, which I think was 21, we developed about a quarter of the housing stock, affordable housing stock, that San Francisco or Seattle did. We're falling behind, and that's got to change. And as a city, we have to be a partner at all levels. And when I talk about job training, I'm talking about the guys swinging the hammers, but I'm also talking about addictions counselors. We, as a community, need to be having a conversation today about how we have enough trained trades people to keep building the housing stock we need in 10, 12, 15 years down the road. We're so focused on today. We're not having that conversation either. And that's how we do it. We've got to build, we've got to start, we've got to expand, and we've got to understand that this isn't 2 years of building, it's 20 years of building.
So why it's not happening now? How would it be changed when you get elected?
We've made some great strides, and it is not clear to me why developers aren't stepping up more. There's a big profit motivation here. It baffles me because we could talk about the cost of building. I met with one affordable housing developer who said that his cost went up 50% year over year, and I think it was 30-ish% his employment cost went up. Materials doubled. A 30-ish increase in labor. He was no longer able to build affordable, by the legal definition or otherwise, housing as a result of that. But San Francisco and Seattle are dealing with that too, but they're able to continue. I think we're seeing a challenge in Portland in community confidence by developers. It's always darkest before the dawn, and it's really dark here. Your job as a developer, you're a professional gambler. Things have to break your way. And we have not had somebody viewed as a leader in City Hall in a long time. And so for people to make that gamble on Portland is really tough right now. So we need the new city council. We need a mayor who's not entrenched with the current interests. And we need a reset where we can give private industry and nonprofit developers more confidence in their bet on our city.
Switching to the next topic, the public safety item in the program. And I think you talked about the street response team.
Yes.
Right? Is it maybe it was like pioneered or Joanne Hardesty worked on it? What do you think we need to do differently about it, if anything?
Well, so just to back up and talk about public safety on a bigger picture and my interest, I actually went to college because I thought I was going to be a police officer. And at the time, Portland had a 4-year degree requirement. So that's why I went to college. By the time I was done, I had gone down this different path and ultimately decided not to do that. But I did go through the police academy and spend 3 years as a reserve deputy sheriff for the county. And I got to spend my nights and weekends running around with the badge and the gun in the car and helping and in some cases detaining and doing that job. I got pulled in a different way. I didn't end up doing it. A few years later, my closest friend in the world was shot and killed in the back, and killed by a Portland police officer on my back porch. It's not it happened over there with some guy that I knew. No, it was my roommate. It was at my house. And so I have a very wide-ranging, I start with a very wide range of base of interest and knowledge in things public safety. I talk a lot more about homelessness because that's a conversation our city must lead with right now. But public safety is the area that I have the deepest knowledge base as a result of those experiences. So I think what we need to do is we need to take a step back. We need to skip the rhetoric that's happening around the police right now and figure out what our community needs. Number one, Portland Street Response has been hugely helpful, and it has such limits in terms of overall staff, number of hours that it's operating, but it's taken the burden off of Portland Police, which is good. We need to look at the jobs that are necessary to have a badge and a gun and have the people with badges and guns to respond to those calls. But the vast majority don't. And those are the kinds of calls that we more and more need a Portland Street Response to handle. This is a great example of what's going to be different under this new form of government. This is something that Joanne Hardesty led the charge for, and her replacement, Renee Gonzalez, almost immediately enacted a spending freeze and banned handing out sleeping bags or tents, to homeless on our street. One person shouldn't have that much authority in our city. That should be a community conversation. We should have a policy board making that up. That was a very, it was not a compassionate response to the problem that we're facing. With our police, I think there's a lot that we need to do. We need to get back to the concept of community policing. This is just simply that police are part of the communities in which they serve. They live here. We should incentivize Portland police officers to live in the city of Portland. We should have the discussion about salary so we can expedite hiring instead of hiring new people and spending a year and a half getting them on the job. That's what it takes right now. Let's cut that time down. Let's do an academy in the city of Portland that mirrors the state standards so we can do things quicker. And let's hire lateral. Why are we not hiring Beaverton police officers? Why, sorry, Beaverton, we should be able to outdo you in terms of money and attract folks that way. So it's less overall training, it's faster. Maybe we can get that turnaround time to 6 months instead of a year and a half. And the last piece of it is we also really do need to ensure accountability for our police in the city. There are a lot of things that are viewed as radical by our police that are not, such as body cams. Portland has a long history of discriminating against those with mental health issues, our neighbors of color, and more. And officers need to be held accountable. If you look at some of the cases folks like Jason Kafori have taken on, you've got folks like Leo Besner, who was the officer that shot and killed my friend. He lost over $1 million in various cases. I think it was 4 different cases against the city. Others where he literally terrorized folks. And we're giving him a nice pension now. We need to ensure that people feel safe in our community. That includes having the right law enforcement, and that includes ensuring they're held accountable.
Do you think we need more police?
I don't think we can make that assessment while we're actively ramping up a Portland Street Response, while we're figuring out what is it that we don't have to do, we should maintain our staffing levels and have this conversation. And I'm sure the data exists looking at where we're at compared to Seattle and San Francisco, comparable cities. We should explore the idea. But I'm not sure that I'm ready to say that we need more until we've solved the underlying issues. And I think way more important than having more is getting the right. We're recruiting the same folks we always have. And definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting something different. And when your focus is on hiring people that played football and served in Iraq, that's all well and good. I'm a veteran, nothing against veterans, but I'm not sure for community-based law enforcement officers, that's the best model.
Do you think like the defund the police was the right idea?
One thing that you'll find about me is I have never been somebody at any point in my career, my life, that has embraced a slogan.
Gone through your program, right? And one of the things you spend more time is about addiction, measure 110. So what is your approach to measure 110? Should it be retracted? Should it be modified? Or should it be like something else happen to it?
It has to be modified. And just, I'm going to back us up a little bit. So I have been involved in the recovery world for the last 3 years this month. And I've worked with a recovery advocacy nonprofit to help influence legislation in Salem successfully, fortunately, in at least one instance. This is a world that I'm steeped in, and for the last year I've been on the board of that nonprofit as well. I spent part of time in Portugal 2 weeks ago, meeting with policymakers, those who adjudicate the low-level drug offenses, and service providers. I went out and went to a mobile methadone clinic. I went to a safe use site to learn. There were a lot of other Oregon policymakers that were there just before me, and they went under the guise of understanding what Portugal did differently, which I thought was a little bit odd of a reason to go. You don't have to travel 5,000 miles to see the really big differences. Big difference number one, and I'll close this loop really fast. Big difference number one is that Portugal used their legislative process in order to legalize, to decriminalize drugs. We used the ballot measure. Ballot measures are the best democracy that money can buy. We had people that were interested in seeing what it would look like to have a state in America with decriminalized drugs. So they used us as their experiment. And this is an organization that has no investment in our state, no stake in what happens. They're experimenting with us. I'm the rare liberal that didn't vote for Measure 110 because that's what I saw in the time. So, closing the loop, we need to revisit it. I have some ideas, but it shouldn't be done by ballot measure. We have a legislature, and so there are two separate tracks happening here. Folks in private industry who are preparing a ballot measure, and the legislature that's looking at this via committee. So what we should do is we should go through a deliberative process. That's what happens when the legislature meets. It's maddening. When you see what's happening in the county commission where people are arguing about things, it can seem just petty, but what you're doing is you're getting at problems that can be vetted in advance. We didn't do any of that with Measure 110. That's what we need to do moving forward, and that's what we're starting to do, and that's what I hope we do.
Who should be responsible?
Oregon State Legislature.
So Oregon State.
Yes. So this is not a Portland problem. It's a state problem. There are only so many things that the city of Portland can do. We have to abide by the state law and federal laws as well. And in this, the state law, reigns supreme. So we have what we couldn't have known. For those that there were many well-minded people that voted in support of, that supported and voted in support of Measure 110. What we could not have foreseen at that time was almost immediately we had this new strain of meth that came out there that I saw referred to as a express train to psychosis, is how I saw it referred in one place. I had never heard the word fentanyl 3 years ago today. In fact, I don't know when I first heard it, but it wasn't in 2020. It was deep into 2021. Portugal, by the way, they don't have meth. Very little. They've never had fentanyl. We're dealing with something horrible and corrosive here that jurisdiction is not. What everyone wants to do is they want to solve the crisis, and I do too. But what we haven't done as a community is admitted that we have to learn how to manage it first and then solve it. So in terms of management, the Measure 110, I want to see more accountability metrics on the money, because I don't think the money is being spent as well as it could, because it was jammed out the door just to get it spent to make people feel good. And that's a really big one for me. And we need to make sure that money can go to things like sobering centers, of which Portland has 0.
What's the importance of sobering center?
If somebody takes the meth, it's that direct line to psychosis. If they're having a specific incident, they have jail as their option, and that's it. We, for a long time, it was called Hooper Detox. We had the Cheers van. People thought of it as the drunk tank, where it would go around, and if you were inebriated, it would pick you up, it would take you there, it would keep you safe from yourself and others until you were sober, and then they would send you home. We have not nearly enough of any other parts of this infrastructure in place. We don't have enough detox. We don't have enough rehab. I have somebody that I've worked closely with, a 120-bed rehabilitation facility. They max out at 75 occupants at any given time because they don't have the workforce for it. We need to train workforce. We need to make sure the money from 110 is going to pay for that. And we need to have a trajectory where we can move people from like, okay, you've been arrested for having you've been cited for having this small amount, or you're in the sobering center. How can we get you to go to this next step? Let's get you into detox. Let's take these few days and get this out of your system, because most rehabs won't take you until it's out of your system. And they're a critical first step.
If some people just don't like to be treated, right? Should there be some consequences in place? Or, if it's maybe some mental issues involved as well, what do you take on that?
I think we need systems in place. We're having this discussion about compulsory civil commitments and making people do something they don't want to do because it's better for the community. And it's a nice discussion to have. Like, I think we should have a discussion about whether we should require more. But we don't have the workforce. We don't have the beds. Where are we going to make them go? We don't have somewhere for them to go. So then we can't make it a requirement until we ensure that infrastructure exists. And I think that's step one for me.
I want to pivot to another question.
All right.
It's
I can talk about 110 all
it's
day.
really charged. We have the question about your foundation or your nonprofit, the Oregon Recovery, about their your 12 steps plan, and I, as an economist, has concerns about the item 12.
Tell me about item 12. I don't
When
remember them
you
all.
tell me it's necessary to increase the prices for alcohol, for smoking, and for marijuana, to tax them all at the same rate and just increase the prices. Because my experience as an economist, if you increase the prices and there is a demand, and I'm addicted, and there is a demand, I'm going to find a loophole to create cheaper product at the cheaper quality using my home kitchen. I am going to be moonshining to create cheap alcohol using kitchen ingredients. I'm going to cook meth in my kitchen using whatever I'm able to find, and who knows what poison I'm going to put in it. Why did you pick this item 12 in your program? You didn't think about the economic consequences?
You might want to consider yourself exceptional if you think you would go through those steps. And most people aren't exceptional. The data shows that with smoking, with alcohol, when you increase the cost, it decreases use. And I think what's most important to highlight is it decreases the use amongst younger users. The younger you are, the more you're impacted by price increases, and the more of a deterrent that extra price becomes to you using that. If you're a 47-year-old alcoholic, you've been drinking your whole life, and suddenly America passes prohibition, you're going to figure out how to make your moonshine. You're going to figure out how to homebrew. But the 17-year-old who has the substance use disorder gene is going to be deprived access, and they're not going to get that.
I'm going to give you anecdotal evidence. One of my classmates had this gene. He went to become a chemical engineer, but never worked for the corporate world. He was making in Russia analog of meth, passed in 2018, because he didn't have the base to experiment. So he was experimenting on himself, all these whatever fake drugs he was making. And he started it when he was 18, like right after school. So, and was doing it for 30 years, yeah.
There's always anecdotes.
He was a mafia man too. He was supplying almost whole of St. Petersburg with all this. So he was an entrepreneurial genius, but I feel really bad that it happened. So when I see all these price increases, I'm like, I know there's entrepreneurs who are going to do it and start early at age 17 and 18. Just a thought. So
there's a massive substance use issue in our country. And when you create a deterrent, there's going to be one person that figures out a workaround and multiple others that decrease their use. And even from a harm reduction standpoint, when you're raising the prices, maybe you decide, well, I'm only going to have a liter of vodka tonight instead of 2, or whatever your example is. Pricing.
okay.
Yeah.
And the taxes will be used by the government to do something with this money, yeah? Hopefully for the program to treat the people and help with the addiction issue and stuff.
Absolutely. I think that any money raised, anytime you raise a tax on something, there should be a direct tie to what it's being spent on. And so if you're raising the prices of liquor, that money should go to pay for prevention, treatment beds, something right along those lines.
We invited you because District 3 includes several schools that serve immigrant and refugee
Gotcha.
community. Do you know schools that have programs that serve immigrants?
No. Tell me more.
Okay.
Yes.
I can tell you
So-
that there are 3 schools
Okay.
with Russian language.
Okay. Is Sunnyside
all-
one?
Nope.
Okay.
All 3 are in your District 3. And they're Kelly,
Okay.
Lane, and the high school is Franklin,
Franklin.
also has Russian language program.
Okay. So Kelly Elementary.
Kelly Elementary,
Middle.
Lane Middle, and Franklin.
And those are the only 3 in the district?
And those are the only 3 with Russian language. Yes.
Wow.
And Miracle, they're all in your district.
But that's good to know, and I will look forward to learning more about those.
Yeah. And many refugees bus their kids because
Down
they
there?
want to keep the language, yes. So they do not live in the area, but they bring their kids there.
It's, public TriMet, or is the
I
city
think
have a system?
it's the cards
Yeah.
that parents just couple,
Yeah.
and one parent is bringing like 3 kids.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so we're talking about immigrants, and Accent Network is helping immigrants. That's in the charter. So, what is your vision as far as like the programs for immigrants go? Do you have any vision for that? Or maybe you had experience in the past, or maybe not.
I've done some really neat things in my career, and there are some fun ones to talk about. I had a role called Bodyman for Bernie Sanders during the 2020 campaign. I worked in his 2016 campaign as well, and there was a lot about insurance and healthcare. I came home and I got hired as a contract lobbyist by the Oregon Latino Health Coalition to lobby for a measure. They had asked for a pilot project to get healthcare access for those who would be eligible for the Oregon health plan, but for their immigration status. The federal money that existed at the time was great, and I encouraged my client, in partnership with a couple partners, to ask to fully fund it. They thought I was crazy. That would mean $150 million a year when they were asking for 10. And they reluctantly agreed. As a result of that, I struggle to talk about this sometimes. I'll just give this my own story, anecdote, I guess. I had a friend of a friend was invited to their birthday dinner, and I was seated right across from this person's father, and he was a medical doctor. And we started talking about his work. He works at a free clinic, and he said to me, he's like, yeah, it's really amazing. The state of Oregon finally did this thing where they stepped up. And he spent the next 30 seconds telling me about the bill that I was the lead lobbyist, which got 55,000 Oregonians health care. And I thought about it. I hesitated. I even looked at my partner. I'm like, and I said, well, that's just fun to hear. Thank you for doing that work. He's on the ground in a clinic. And I was the lead lobbyist to pass that. And I saw him do the, have a drink and kind of this, and he asked me a question, and then I just kind of saw this like look over his face. And he all but came to tears, like realizing, like, here's this guy who's just this political hack, like, you know, but then what we do is we go in and we do work like that. For me, one of the things that I did with Bernie Sanders in 2019, even before I had that particular role, was I staffed him for a visit to the Homestead Child Detention Center, where as a nation we were literally caging kids, where you couldn't hug. As you all may know, some of those kids we fouled that up so bad. Not just doing that, but we created nothing in there to reconnect those kids ever with their parents. And some of them never. They're orphans. They'll never know who
So
their
they're in
parents
the
are.
foster.
Yeah, we just completely destroyed their lives. Part of the reason I'm running is because of that day and seeing that, like, if this is what we're doing as a nation, if I don't do everything that I can to step up for those in need, I'm not going to sleep well at night. That was Immigrants. The money for the 55,000 Oregonians is 100% for immigrants. I want to use my experience in my career to be a voice for those who need it in our community. And that's not people that live in $1 million houses. That's immigrants.
So what did you learn out of this whole involvement with national campaign? What is going to help you now?
Know your values and never back down. I learned a lot, but that's the summary.
Were you present at the Rose Quarters when the bird landed?
I was, and you know, the first time that I suggested we put birdseed on that podium, everyone made fun of me. I'm just kidding, sorry, that's a bad joke.
And I was like, was it like trick?
No,
That
it was very
somebody-
spontaneous. That was all about his response. I mean, a bird landing on a podium, nobody cares. But just his whole response in the moment was just perfect.
What? Now you see, this little bird doesn't know it. Oh my. I think there may be some symbolism here. I know it doesn't look like it, but that bird is really a dove asking us for world peace. No more wars.
That was the second biggest fundraising event of the entire campaign in 2016. People loved that so much. I just had one in my pocket. I wish I still had it. I had it for my last meeting, a birdie picture. My gosh, that was a fun thing. I was there. I was in the. I was back. I was managing media at that event, so I was way in the back. And my focus is on logistics in that moment. And I almost got knocked over by a photographer. And then I saw another one moving swiftly, and so I looked just in time. Like, and I mean, it's just like, because the bird was flying around, and it just like everyone was like waiting for that moment, and it just happened, and it was, yeah. So that was a lot of fun.
Do you consider yourself like politically a progressive or Democrat
Yes.
or liberal or socialist? Like,
All of the above?
I
Or
am-
none of the above.
I embrace all of those words. I am a liberal. I am a results-oriented progressive. I also I am a dues-paying member of the Democratic Socialist of America, because I think their passion for the human beings in America is obvious and prevalent.
Another tough question.
Okay.
You ran 3 times,
Twice.
twice, so third time is now.
Mm-hmm.
What are the lessons that you learned that will help you win for the third round?
Do more. Work harder. Speak from your heart. And I think that's the big one. For me, when I ran for office when I was young, this is so weird to talk about, but for me, I feel like while I knew my values have not changed, and I would never say something that questioned my values, but I was always trying to say things in a way that I thought people wanted to hear it. And I think everyone saw through that. And now, I don't care. I'm going to say what's on my mind and hope that enough people agree with me. And by virtue of being one of the biggest fundraisers so far in the race, I think it's resonating. And so that's the biggest lesson, be true to yourself. Took me a minute to get there.
A minute. Thank you. 30 years.
No, to say that. So,
Thanks for your time.
of course.
And we might invite you in the future.
Well, I like talking, so I'd
if
love to come back.
something- And something else come up, yep. And
Cool.
if there is a development somewhere with the homeless topic, we might call you
Cool.
again.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I'm around. You know where to find me.
Everybody.